circles, triangles, and trigonometry based on the survey that you guys filled out last week. And then we're going to talk about just what to look forward to, like going forward in your SAT prep, and like how to continue to tackle the weaknesses. And then we're going to have a Kyros platform demo at the end. So first we're going to go into probability, and then Caden's going to take over to explain these.
Okay, sounds good. So below on your left here, we have 3 of the very basic rules of probability that you should keep in mind while doing SAT practice tests. Assuming that you know set theory, the little like U shape between A and B that you see here, that means or. So this is addition rule is probability of A or B is the probability of A plus probability of B minus their intersection, which means the probability that A and B happen together. So if A and B are mutually exclusive, that means that mutually exclusive pretty much means one happening means that the other cannot happen. So if that is true, then the formula is reduced to just probability of A plus the probability of B. Similarly, for multiplication, here's the same formula, except there's some conditional probability in here. So the probability of A intersect B, that means A and B, is probability of A times probability of B given A, or the other way around. And again, if they're independent, meaning that one happening does not affect the other, then probability of A and B is just both of them multiplied together. And the complement rule is the probability that A doesn't happen, which is noted by this little C here, is 1 minus the probability that A does happen. So those are just some important rules to keep in mind for solving probability problems. And here on the side, I won't read all of this, but we'll go into a problem using joint and marginal and conditional probabilities in the next slide. So I just wanted to kind of reinforce that marginal is usually some numbers that you have to calculate for yourself. And that's done by totaling up the columns, each column, and totaling up the rows. So pretty much the numbers that you get on the margins of the two, of the whole table are your marginal probabilities. So that's all I wanted to point out.
Okay, and then I'm just gonna spend a few minutes to talk about what you guys should do moving forward and for your practice tests. So I already talked about this in the previous workshops about how it's really important to just look at your mistakes after you take practice tests or do reading passages or like writing or math. And it's important to just separate the different issues with your mistakes. So one already said it's time issue. The second one is question comprehension. The third is content issue. So you didn't know find the answer, or you just weren't sure like about the material required for the question. Or the fourth one is just a careless error. So just going forward when you're practicing, just when you're marking the questions, try to ask yourself why exactly you missed the questions. And definitely be ruthless about understanding your mistakes, and just don't just keep moving on and doing more practice problems, because it's definitely important to understand and take the time to understand your mistakes first before moving on to do more practice problems. Because if you just do like a lot of practice problems but don't understand your mistakes or like where you went wrong before, it'll be really hard and just much harder to improve overall. Okay, and then so what should you do? So whenever you practice for the SAT, whether that be practice tests or practice problems, just it's very helpful to circle every question when you're going through that you are even 20% unsure about. So I just like marking any question that you're unsure about, even if you get it right when you check your answers, because you must be unsure about it for a reason, and like you might choose the correct answer by accident. So it's important to just review both the questions you answered incorrectly and every question you marked, even if you got it correct. So that way, even if you guess on a question correctly, you can still review it. So also in a notebook, when you're practicing, you can write down the gist of the question, why you missed it, how you can avoid the question or avoid the mistake in the future, and then the question type, which is what I have been assigning for you guys as homework and for you guys to write. But just be sure you're not reading the answer explanation and moving on, because just understanding exactly why you're unsure about the questions and why you got it wrong is very important. So just ask yourself why, and always analyze why exactly and what exactly made you miss each question and what you need to improve on for future problems. So, for example, elimination, you couldn't eliminate enough of the incorrect answers because, as I said, like for the reading section, a lot of the times the answers might seem correct, but just try to eliminate the incorrect answers rather than trying to choose an answer that seems correct. So, for example, if you couldn't eliminate enough incorrect choices, why couldn't you eliminate um, the answer choice during the test? And how can you avoid that or just improve upon that in the future? Or if it's a careless error, you misread the question. Why did you misread the question? And what should you do in the future to avoid this? Or for example, vocab. You didn't know why or what the key word meant. So one step further is what word was this? And you can search up the definition or synonyms. Okay, and then another important thing is you can try resolving the questions when you check your answers. When you check them, you might want to just go straight to look at the answer and how the answer key does it. But this is also passive learning because you're just looking at the information instead of trying to do it yourself. So instead, try to attempt the question a second time after looking at the correct answer, but without reading the answer explanation. And just ask yourself why your answer was wrong and if you can actually solve for the correct answer. Because around like the second time around, you might have less time pressure and everything. So something might just click and you might be able to get the right answer the second time. So when you do, you can definitely just remember the material better and understand your mistake and just why exactly you couldn't solve it the first time. So yeah, just make sure when you're resolving the question, um, just like do it yourself because that way you will also be practicing the correct interpretation of the text for reading and writing and just understanding the passage from a new point of view. And then for the math section, you can also see it from a different perspective. And as I said, something might just click for you. So it's definitely important to just try to attempt the questions that you missed again instead of just looking directly at the answer explanation. Because a lot of the times it is hindsight bias, where if you look at the answer explanation, you might just tell yourself, oh, I know how to do this. But just sometimes just doing it yourself will really make a difference. And so just treat each wrong question like a puzzle and just try to solve it yourself. And then if you really can't, then you can go and look at the answer explanation.